We are getting answers to some of your most common questions for police. It's a series that we're starting here on the morning show where our viewers send us their questions about the law, crime maybe, where they live or work, and alerts that you should be aware of to help protect you and your family. As it turns out, we have received several questions from our viewers about driving and certain traffic laws. Christian Hancock from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is joining us to answer some of those questions. Good morning, Christian. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Jen and Bruce. Thanks for having me.
All right, so first question from one of our viewers involves specifically police officers who maybe come up behind a driver, maybe at a stop sign or a light, and they run that driver's license plate, even if maybe that driver did nothing wrong. Is that legal?
Yes, ma'am. It is legal, and it's one of the valuable tools that we have in law enforcement to check on individuals, to check on vehicles. It's not necessarily going to happen every time an officer is behind you, but remembering we can find out a lot from the vehicle about a driver by running that tag, whether the tag is valid, whether it's stolen, whether the driver's license is suspended, or maybe your vehicle appears to be something that went out earlier in the day that might be a suspect vehicle. So yes, the ability for us to do that is there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every time an officer is behind you that they're running your tag.
So next question, is it illegal to be an adult passenger in a vehicle and not have your license or identification with you?
It is not illegal. You do have to have a license on you if you're driving, but if you're not driving a motor vehicle, or if you're out walking, you do not have to have an ID. But just remember, if something happens and you do get approached by an officer, again, if you're suspected of a crime, we do have the ability to ask who you are and ascertain your identity for those purposes. It is not illegal to not have an ID on you at all times, though.
Okay. Now, another question, this one about traffic laws. Is it legal to drive 5 to 10 miles over the speed limit, or is it at the officer's discretion to give you a ticket?
It is illegal to drive over the speed limit. The speed limit in Florida is the actual speed limit. However, most people don't know this probably. Any modifications you make to a vehicle might alter your speedometer, and most citizens aren't out getting their speedometers calibrated on a regular basis. So that margin of error is there for all vehicles to be inaccurate a mile or two over and under the speed limit. As such, law enforcement officers are going to give you that courtesy. We're not, we would never stop you for going a couple miles over unless in what you're doing creates a hazard, maybe in a school zone or something like that. So yes, we can stop you for going over the actual speed limit, but you're not going to find that very often for any reason.
All right, good. So this is another question. So why is it illegal to drive with hazard lights on during heavy downpours of rain? This driver writes, I am guilty of this, but it helps other drivers to see me. And it turns out, Chris, that it's no longer illegal in certain situations.
Correct. It has historically been illegal to drive your hazards on. The biggest reason is, if you remember, Jen, older vehicles, when you have your hazards on, your brake lights don't work. So if you're driving with your hazards on and you hit the brakes, the person behind you wouldn't know that you're hitting the brakes. So that's historically why it has been illegal to have your flashers on. Middle of last year, Governor DeSantis signed a bill that put into effect that you can actually drive with your hazards on under certain conditions, being rain, fog, decreased visibility, but only on roads where the speed reaches 55 miles an hour or more. So if you're on the interstates, you're on these limited access highways, you can do it if the visibility is poor and the speed limits are over 55. You do have that legal right to turn their hazards on these days.
And now, Chris, this is actually a question that came up during a previous interview that I had with you that I thought that would help the public. It's about reporting fender benders. Do drivers legally have to report them to police if no one is injured?
Well, there's a lot of semantics that go into this law as far as traffic crashes. The way the law reads is anything under $500, you don't have to necessarily report, but you are obligated to exchange information with the other driver. So provided that you stop, you get out, you have a conversation with the other driver, and you are both good with leaving that scene, then that is okay. Where you do have to report, mandatory reporting, is if somebody is injured, whether a vehicle gets towed or not. So there are some stipulations to that. But at the end of the day, a minor fender bender on our streets, you do not necessarily have to call the police. You can self-report on our online system at jacksheriff.org if you wish to do that, or you can still call a police officer to assist with that. But no, you don't necessarily have to report all crashes. They're civil in nature.
Fantastic information. Christian Hancock, thanks for your time this morning from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And we want to remind our viewers, we would love to hear from you. Do you have a question about certain traffic laws or about crime where you live, maybe a scam that you've heard about? Send us your questions. They don't necessarily have to be in Duval County. If they're in another county in our area, we're happy to call law enforcement from that county as well to get your questions answered. And of course, you can do this by going to news4jax.com to post your question and search for this story. Get your questions for Jacksonville Sheriff's Office answered on the homepage.